An agricultural, fisheries and conservation department worker dies after being stung by bees on Lantau Island. A 6-month extension of the expiry date for the COVID oral drug Paxlovid. And a U.S. congressional panel demands sanctions against 29 designated national security judges in Hong Kong. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. A government worker died after being stung by bees while planting trees on Lantau Island this morning. It's believed the man had hypertension and was not wearing any protective gear at the time. There is evidence that the man had at least 4 bee stings. The actual cause of death has yet to be determined, pending autopsy results. Sharon Tang tells us more.
Moments after the bee stings, field assistant Ng Kwok Pui was airlifted to Pamela Yut Nethersol Eastern Hospital. Resuscitation failed to save his life. He was 64 years old. At 10 a.m. today, Ng Kwok Pui was carrying out afforestation work with 4 other staff members of the Agriculture, Fisheries and Conservation Department, or AFCD. The location was the Chima Wan Country Trail near Mong Chong Wan. Ng had at least 4 bee stings. He had hypertension and was wearing long sleeves but not protective gear at the time. None of his colleagues were stung. The 5 workers were split into teams to plant trees this morning. All of a sudden, Ng ran downhill. He was seen being chased by some bees with black and yellow stripes on their bodies. His hands quickly became swollen before he lost his consciousness. Hours after the incident, the afforestation workers' tools and seedlings were still there as police and AFCD officers carried out investigations. Zedman Lee, an emergency service doctor, noted toxin from a bee can trigger allergies, causing breathing difficulty and lowering the blood pressure. He added that there may also be complications resulting in death, meaning it can be dangerous for people with asthma or heart diseases. Mountaineer Chong Kin Man said it's best to squat down and cover the neck and head with clothes when a person is chased by bees. He added that attempts to fight and struggle against the bees would only attract more bees. According to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, those allergic to insect stings should consider carrying the epinephrine autoinjector as a first aid tool. Authorities said Ng had served the department for 40 years and continued working even after retirement and expressed the deepest condolences to him and his family. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
Meantime, all 5 COVID testing centers and community testing stations in the city will cease operations from tomorrow. On the last day of operations, few citizens visited the testing stations. The Health Bureau said that with the lifting of COVID restrictions around the world, such as pre-departure testing, the need for such tests has dropped to a low level. In order to make good use of resources, the government decided to close all testing centers. If residents need to get tested, they can visit clinics at their own expense. These centers will once again serve their original functions or be used for recreational purposes. A U.S. congressional panel has demanded sanctions against 29 national security judges in Hong Kong. A report issued by the U.S. Congressional Executive Commission on China noted prosecutions related to the national security law have divided civil society and suppressed the opposition. The commission urged the U.S. government to consider sanctioning the 29 judges who have dealt with national security cases. The list goes from judiciary officers, district judges, to Chief Justice Andrew Chung. The Office of the Commissioner of China's Foreign Ministry in Hong Kong has slammed the report as a smear campaign with false allegations. It added any attempt to isolate China is doomed to fail. Hong Kong's GDP returned to year-on-year growth of 2.7% after contracting by 4.1% in the last quarter. Authorities said if the current momentum of economic recovery continues, the growth rate can reach near the maximum of the forecast range of 5.5%. In the first quarter economic report 2023, the government presented today, it showed the local economy saw a notable improvement. Authorities also predict inbound tourism and local demand will continue to be the main drivers of economic growth this year. Meanwhile, the forecast for inflation this year is to remain moderate. In the United States, COVID-related asylum restrictions that have expelled millions of illegal migrants since March 2020 were lifted early Friday. The so-called Title 42 order was swiftly replaced by new asylum regulations meant to deter illegal crossings across the Mexico-U.S. border. This did not stop thousands of migrants from crossing before the new regulations kicked in. Tracy Furness has more.
Thousands of migrants have waded through rivers, climbed walls and scrambled up embankments in hopes of entering the United States to be processed before Title 42 expired at midnight, May 11th. Some migrants said they heard that it would be more difficult to enter the US after May 11th, and they rushed across the border before the deadline. Aileen and her children, aged 16 and 5, walked through a scorching desert towards the Mexico-US border. But when they arrived at US immigration, they were denied entry. The family fled Colombia after receiving death threats. We are fleeing from some men in Cartagena. We could no longer bear the pressure. We had to leave home, everything, and risk this, but it's not easy, Aileen said. Former US President Donald Trump implemented Title 42 in March 2020, aimed to curb the spread of the COVID virus in crowded detention centers. It allowed US authorities to quickly expel migrants to Mexico or other countries without the chance to request asylum. President Joe Biden has a new policy to crack down on illegal crossings, while setting up legal pathways for migrants who apply online, seek a sponsor, and undergo background checks.
We are clear-eyed about the challenges we are likely to face in the days and weeks ahead, and we are ready to meet them. We expected to see large numbers of encounters initially. We are already seeing high numbers of encounters in certain sectors.
Meanwhile, a group of Republican senators spoke on Thursday in a border town of Brownsville, Texas.
We are witnessing an absolute travesty unfolding on our southern border. On Monday, we apprehended over 10,000 people on the border. There are right now, when we're standing, more than 22,000 people camped just south of the border, getting ready to come across.
Several last-minute court actions have added to the confusion over how the new border policies will play out in coming days. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Wang Yi, director of the Office of the Central Commission for Foreign Affairs, met with U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan in Vienna. According to Chinese state media, the two sides had candid, in-depth, substantive, and constructive discussions on Wednesday and Thursday. The meeting was not publicized by Beijing or Washington beforehand. CCTV reported that Wang and Sullivan held talks on removing obstacles in China-U.S. relations and stabilizing the two countries' relationship. Wang also expounded China's solemn position on the Taiwan question, the report said. Meanwhile, the White House said Sullivan told Wang that the Biden administration is looking to move beyond tensions spurred by the shooting down of a Chinese balloon that traversed America in February. Meanwhile, other top Chinese officials continued their diplomatic push in Europe. In the Netherlands, King Willem Alexander received Vice President Han Zheng in The Hague on Thursday before Prime Minister Mark Rutte held political talks with the visitor. Media reports said high on the agenda was a plan to further restrict export of advanced chip-making technology to China by Dutch tech giant ASML. The visit also came amid diplomatic tensions over proposed new EU trade measures against countries that help Russia circumvent the bloc's sanctions. The proposal sparked a warning from Beijing that it would retaliate if targeted by such sanctions. On the same day, Foreign Minister Qin Gang met with representatives of the Norwegian business community in Oslo. He said China and Norway need to work together to promote trade liberalization. Foreign Minister Qin Gang is reportedly expected to visit Australia in July. Diplomatic exchanges between the two countries were frozen in 2020 when Beijing put curbs on a dozen Australian exports. It came after an Australian call for an international probe into the origins of COVID. Tension has eased since Australia elected a Labor government in May last year. Meanwhile, Australian Trade Minister Don Farrell has met his Chinese counterpart Wang Wentao in Beijing today. Australia is pushing for the removal of all Chinese trade barriers, which began to ease this year. China is Australia's largest trading partner, with two-way trade in goods worth nearly $200 billion in 2022. Still ahead, the chief executive speaks out on press freedom and the Basic Law. In Pakistan, former Prime Minister Imran Khan granted a 2-week bail. And a driverless shuttle bus now in use in the airport's restricted area. Welcome back. In Pakistan, former Prime Minister Imran Khan has been granted a 2-week bail by Islamabad's High Court. Tensions were high in Pakistan after the Supreme Court ruling that his detention earlier this week was unlawful. The politician was arrested in court on Tuesday on corruption charges. This triggered widespread protests and violence, with Khan's supporters believing the case is politically motivated. David Garrett reports.
This is no ordinary court appearance. Hundreds gathered, huge numbers of police and security personnel, and massive media presence. The army has been deployed in parts of the capital to keep peace. All for one man, former Prime Minister Imran Khan. Even in the crowd, he stands out. 3 days ago, when the 70-year-old was in court, he was arrested on new charges. He spent several nights in prison. While he's been incarcerated, his supporters took to the streets to vent their anger. They say the corruption charges are politically motivated and are aimed at stopping the former PM standing in this year's elections. The news of Khan granted freedom was greeted joyously in Karachi, dancing in the streets. In his political base of Lahore, people were hanging off the side of lorries. Vehicle horns rang out in celebration. They saw the decision as a victory for them. Crowds enthusiastically chanting Khan's name. Released from jail, Khan spent Thursday night in a government guest house. The government criticised the Supreme Court ruling, but Khan's legal team says it was the correct decision.
The contention is that we are of the opinion that once there is an investigation in any rape case, that person has to be given repeated notices. And if he doesn't appear in the investigation, he doesn't cooperate, then the investigating authority has the right to arrest.
Khan was ousted as Pakistan's leader in April 2022 through a no-confidence vote in Parliament. His supporters hope he will lead the country again. After being granted bail, he is a free man again for now, but he still has more than 100 corruption charges against him and many legal hurdles to overcome. David Garrett, TVB News.
In Finland, 27 people, mostly teenagers, were injured on Thursday when a temporary pedestrian bridge collapsed in the city of Espoo, just outside the capital, Helsinki. The teenagers were part of a group of 8th grade students returning from a field trip. Helsinki hospital authorities said in a statement that the injuries were not life-threatening. Police say a temporary bridge had been built from plywood while construction was going on in the area. Spain will bring in new laws so outside workers do not have to endure extreme heat. This comes as the country has suffered record spring temperatures during the last few weeks. The government in Madrid says climate change is directly affecting their people, and they've been forced to act. Spain sizzled in record temperatures in April, and a quarter of the country is under drought restrictions or alerts. Farmers have been hit hard. Spain is Europe's top fruit exporter, and they've requested emergency funds from the EU because crops aren't growing. It's been so bad this year, the nation's already experienced double the number of extremely hot summer days before the end of May. Mingpao newspaper announced yesterday it will stop publishing the veteran political cartoonist Sun Tzu's works starting from Sunday. Chief Executive John Lee said, while the Basic Law protects residents' freedom of speech, it does not mean individuals can smear authorities. Mimo Sangai with more.
The cartoons of prominent political cartoonist Sun Tzu, also known as Wong Kei-kwon, have been criticized by the government multiple times in recent months. Starting from Sunday, the 3-decade-long cartoon blog will be permanently suspended. If anyone searches Wong's works on the website of Hong Kong Public Library, the page will say no matching results. The Leisure and Cultural Services Department said the local libraries will review their collections regularly, removing any items that are suspected of violating the national security law. In response to the comment that the government cannot tolerate any criticisms from society, Chief Executive John Lee disagreed. Lee stressed the city has freedom of speech and freedom of the press under the Basic Law, adding authorities receive different opinions daily, including criticism. The CE, however, said he does not allow any information or messages attempting to mislead or incite individuals to smear the government, a situation the administration will take action against. Lee also said it is the news outlets' responsibility to decide on the type of content they present to readers. Vice Chairman of the National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, Lan Zhengying, also commented on Mingpo's decision. He questioned why Wong's cartoons only target the SAR and China, but not Western countries, such as the UK and the US. Leung believes no credible news outlet should publish such works. Mimo Sanai, TVB News.
Some of the hospital authorities' COVID oral drugs, Paxlovid, were originally scheduled to expire early this year. However, the drug manufacturer has decided to extend the expiration date by 6 months. Some pharmacists said the drugs are still effective. Veronica Lin with more.
Recently, there's been a surge in COVID cases. The hospital authorities said that there have been more than 400 daily hospitalizations due to COVID over the past few days, 20 times that of the numbers in March. For those who are over 60 or with chronic illnesses, they can obtain oral drugs developed by Pfizer and Merck to prevent severe symptoms. However, the hospital authority admitted that some of Pfizer's Paxlovid expired in the beginning of the year, but the expiration date was later extended for half a year. Dr. Owen Tang, medical director of the Hospital Authority Infectious Disease Center, said that some drugs expired between January and March. However, when the pharmaceutical companies tested these drugs on their efficacy and potency, they found that it was possible to extend their expiration dates. A private doctor pointed out that since October last year, the government has successively recalled the expired Paxlovid and printed new labels with the extended expiration dates. However, he said he did not give the new packaging to his patients in order to prevent the reselling of these drugs. Family doctor Lam Wing-wo said he needed to explain to patients, especially the elderly, that the expired medications are valid until September. Another medical professional explained that since COVID drugs were developed in such a short period of time, factories might not have had enough time to determine how long they could actually last. Hence, the current expiration dates are a more conservative estimate. Extending the dates after doing more testing would not be a problem, he added. William Choi, president of the Society of Hospital Pharmacists of Hong Kong, explained that each drug has a main ingredient. If we were to extend its validity period, at least 95% of that ingredient must be kept intact. He added that the difference in the expiration dates between Pfizer and Merck is due to the fact that two drugs are made up of different ingredients. Veronica Lin, TVB News.
The Hong Kong International Airport said a driverless bus will start carrying staff to work in the airport's restricted area from Friday. This is not an ordinary shuttle bus. Take a closer look. It has no driver. While the size of the bus is smaller than a normal one, it can still carry 14 passengers. The airport authorities said the purpose of launching the driverless vehicle is to save manpower and enhance efficiency. Airport Authority Executive Director Stephen Yu said more autonomous vehicles will be introduced and used in the airport in the future, including taking air passengers to and from the airport and the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau bridge. China's automobile exports surpassed Japan, becoming the world's largest car exporter in the first quarter. The China Passenger Car Association announced that China exported close to 1.07 million vehicles in the first quarter, a 54% surge compared with last year. Other data suggests that Japan exported about 1.04 million vehicles in the same period, meaning China is now the largest automobile exporter. Mainland media quoted industry insiders as saying that the driving force behind these exports is the Russia-Ukraine war. They said international brands in the Russian market have been fully replaced by Chinese cars, and that China's new energy vehicles' competitiveness has improved. It is predicted that car exports in China will reach 4 million this year. That's the news. Have a great weekend.